Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Beaver and today we're doing a fun little experiment using only a pot still. Now what I've been wondering for a very long time is whether or not you can make good vodka using only a pot still. So let's quickly get into the experiment and see if you can make good quality vodka using only a pot still. Okay, now before everybody jumps into the comment section and explains all about how they've always been making vodka using a pot still, let me just quickly explain what I mean about making a good quality vodka. Now, I've been making product in a pot still, column still, something with plates, reflux still, and all different kinds of stills for a very long time. But only when I use plates, packing, and a ton of reflux can I get to a product that tastes of absolutely nothing. You only get the pure vodka flavor, which is generally just a sweet ethanol flavor with almost no body and no taste. So similar to like a Sky vodka, something like that. So that's what I want to compare this kind of vodka to. So see if we can get to a similar taste and profile that you do when you buy a higher quality vodka from the store, or if you have access to running a plate or a column still where you have a ton of packing in the column and you use a ton of reflux to strip away as much as of the flavor as possible. Now I know Bearded and Board did a video on how to make a vodka using a basic still. He used a whole bunch of super interesting techniques. If you want to check out that video, I'll link it up there so you can go and check it out. And then yeah, you can see how he managed to strip away as much flavor as possible out of the spirit. Now for me, I wanted to take a simpler route. So as you all know, that every time you distill a product and you are done, that back set that's left inside of your still does have some smell to it. It's about, I can describe it to like maybe some sour milk kind of smell to it. So it has a sour froth tinge to it. So that just tells me that some of the flavor components do stay behind in the still every time. Even after you've done a stripping run and you're putting a relatively clear spirit into your spot, there is still a distinct smell to the end product that stays behind in the still. So some of the flavor should stay behind. So what I thought was, how many times can I distill the same product, redistill the same product, and strip flavors, leaving them behind in the still that has joined with the water that you dilute the product down with? How many times can you do that before, number one, it starts just tasting exactly the same every time you do it, and you've removed as much flavor as you can with a standard pot still? Or when does it physically just, it's not even worth it anymore to keep on distilling the product because your yield gets less and less and less? Now quickly, I did the same run, and let me just quickly explain the experiment. So I started with a basic sugar wash. Now why a basic sugar wash? Well, I've distilled it many times. I know what the flavor and the profile of it is, so I know what to expect in the first run, the second run, and so on and so forth, because I've done it plenty of times where I've used my bigger still and I've run plates with a ton of reflux, took it off slowly and managed to get it to as close as azeotrope as possible and got a pretty much neutral product out of it. But so I know what a sugar wash should taste like when you get to that point, or as close to that point as possible. So I thought it would be a good benchmark. So I start with a sugar wash. If you want to know how to make a sugar wash, probably one of the most basic washes that you can start with in the home distilling. It is basically water, sugar, nutrients, and yeast into a bucket, and you just leave it to ferment. Once it's done fermenting, you put it in your still, you run it, and you can make a pretty decent neutral spirit with it that you can use to make other products where you want to add flavorings or any of those kind of things. It does have a very distinct smell and taste to it. A lot of guys on the YouTubes and over on TikTok calls it sugar bowl flavor. So if you've ever drank homemade spirits, it tends to have like a funky flavor to it, like a little bit of an off flavor, but not too pronounced. And that is what sugar washes does. It gives you a little bit of a almost off honey kind of flavor. It's not bad, but it is distinct in flavor. So yeah, now knowing what that does, I went with the sugar wash. What I did is made a big batch of it, and I stripped it through our mini still. Now unfortunately my camera did pack up during the stripping runs. All I did is I dumped the product into the still, ran my still as hot and as fast as I could with the condenser keeping up. So as long as my condenser knocked all the vapor down into liquid, I just let it ride, and I stripped all of the product down, and we ended up with roughly about 10 liters of low wines at just under 40%, about 38% after all the stripping runs. Keeping in mind I did strip to 0 on all the runs, so I wanted to extract as much as I could, because every subsequent run we're going to be leaving a little bit of liquor in the tank, and I wanted as much to start with as possible. So after the first batch, I took my low wines, dumped them into the still, all 10 liters of it. What I did then is I did my very first spirit run. So that is what's in this jar here. So our very first spirit run. Now this spirit run was done nice and slow. We did it as we would a normal run. I collected my 4 shots, I collected my heads, and I waited for that transition to hearts. I then collected a hearts cut, and then waited for tails. I then blended, once we hit tails and I thought I'm not going to keep any more of the product, I turned up the heat, turned it back into a stripping run again, and then I just collected up until 0 again coming off the spout, because after I took a small sample of that first run after blending the hearts back together, I then dumped everything back into a jar, allowed my still to cool down. Allowed my still to cool down, then dumped all of those now secondary low wines. So that will be a product that was stripped, then distilled, now back into our still for a second time. So all I did is I took out a little bit of the liquor. There was about 100 mils of the liquor, and then I proofed it down and put it into my jar here. So the first stripping run I took off, like I said, it went into the pot at about 38. We managed to get about 85% ABV coming off the spout throughout the heart, so I was happy with that. The second time I proofed all the liquor back down to 38% because it was a second run. Even running it to 0, we still got a higher final ABV. We ended up at about 45%. Dumped all of that back in, and then did my third run, meaning the second spirit run of a stripping run. So I ended up with this cut here. Once again, did exactly the same thing, did my whole run, just collected everything as I would if I was going to keep the whole product run, did my blending and kept only a little bit, dumped everything back into the still, drained all the water out and so on and so forth, and only new low wines and water went back in, and I redid the whole process. Now we did that up until we got to the last jar here. Now this is cut number 5 or run number 5. So effectively this product was distilled 6 times. So that's 1 stripping run and then a spirit run, another spirit run, another spirit run, another spirit run, and the final 5th spirit run. So I did the whole cuts again, once again, and I only took a small sample, and this is the cut here. Now, just to keep the experiment fair, I didn't taste or smell any of these proof down. All I did is during the run, I did do the fingertip test to see where my transition is between heads and hearts, and when I started getting tails, so I can do my cuts. So yeah, on the first point, the point of diminishing returns. Now, round about at 3 times distilled, the yield started dropping off substantially. Now, that compounding effect of the amount of alcohol that we leave inside of the pot after distillation was starting to outweigh the benefits of the loss in flavor. So every time that you distill, a little bit of the alcohol is left in solution in the water that you just can't get out. So yes, I did distill down to 0, but at the end of the day, you can't extract all the alcohol. So about maybe 2% of alcohol to 3% of ABV for the total volume is left behind. So you keep on leaving a little bit of liquid behind in the form of ethanol. So my yield dropped by about 10 to 15% every run within the hearts cut. My heads cut got slightly smaller where the transition happened every time. I do not know why that happened, but I collected the same amount of heads and same amount of 4 shots for each of the runs to keep it fair. So I took the first cut that I did and I kept the heads and the hearts there, but on taste the heads got smaller and smaller every time we distilled it. So yeah, that says something. I don't know what it means. So after about number 3, yeah, we started getting a very small amount of hearts, where we started with, let's say at the end of the day, when we started with the 35-liter sugar wash, we should have ended up with roughly about 4, maybe 5 liters of good usable product, but we ended up only using at the end, right at the end when we did run number 5 here, we only managed to squeak in about 1.5 liters of good usable hearts before we went straight into tails. So yeah, as for the flavor, let's quickly check. Maybe the reduction in flavor to get that purity makes up for the lack of yield. Let's see. Let's start with jar number 1. As you can see, jar number 1 has a slight tinge to it, maybe a bit cloudy. All of these have improved down to 40%. So yeah, it does have that trademark sugar bowl sweetness. You can smell the sugar on it. There is some faint smells in the back of there. It's not completely just sweet ethanol flavor. Yeah, as for on the taste, as expected, that's just a simple sugar wash that has been distilled. Now for number 2. Now, straight off the bat, number 2, clear as day. This does have a more of a ethanol hit to it already. It doesn't have that huge sugar bowl flavor, but there is still some hints in the background there. It's not just sweet ethanol, but it does smell a lot cleaner. On the taste as well, it's a lot cleaner. It does have a slight sugar bowl aftertaste. On the mouthfeel, it's exactly the same as number 1. It still has some body to it, but not a lot, but it still feels like it's coating your tongue a little bit and filling up the mouth. It's not just hitting the tongue and evaporating. So yeah, that's for number 2. Now, like I said, here on number 3, our yield started dropping quite substantially, so we ended up with a very small yield at number 5. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is already starting to smell more like nothing. You do get that slight ethanol hit. You do get that nice sweetness on the back end that you do from a normal vodka. It has almost none of the flavors that number 1 has. So yeah, from 1 to 3, there's a massive leap, massive difference between the flavors. If 1 is compared to like full strength cool drink, number 3 will be like 50-50 mix between full strength cool drink and water. So it has some of the flavors, but they are so deep behind, and not even in a retro nasal you can really pick them up. It is purely just on the lingering taste that comes afterwards. You do get that sugar bowl flavor. Now, number 4. Now this smells like almost absolutely nothing. Yeah, well, that's just sweet ethanol. So number 4 is definitely my favorite by far if I'm comparing it to something that tastes like a good quality vodka, meaning something that has almost no flavor. It's just the ethanol warmness in your mouth and the heat traveling down your throat from swallowing it, and then it just disappears off your tongue. So yeah, number 4, yeah, that's probably my favorite tasting so far. In saying that, we only managed to get about 2 liters of hearts of that one, so it's about half the amount that we would have gotten if we did just a single stripping run and then a spirit run. Now for number 5. Well, number 5 tastes like nothing. It tastes very close to number 4. But yeah, there's no flavor, there's no sugar bowl, there's almost no flavor lingering on my tongue. Even blowing out through my nose with that still coating my tongue, yeah, it's just gone. It has almost no body to it. It feels like drinking air that has a little bit of an alcohol bite to it. But yeah, it's almost completely neutral. Now, can you make a good quality vodka using a pot still? In my honest opinion, yes, you can. It does take a lot of work. This did take 6 runs, excluding the stripping runs, which were about 4 stripping runs to get to that point. So we did 4 stripping runs, 1 spirit run to get to the run number 1, and then subsequent spirit runs to get to all the different collections. And every time we did it, we lost more and more spirit. So yeah, you can create a good vodka. I would say I would stop around about number 3, so distill it 3 times. Your yield is about a 20% when you compare it to just doing a stripping run and then a spirit run, 20% less, but the difference in quality of the product is quite high. And if you're going to use it for gins and that kind of stuff, flavored products, you don't want that sugar bowl effect to interfere with the flavor. So Yes. Does it make a good product? Well, for a sugar wash, definitely. If it was a all grain wash, well, yeah, it will probably go and even match some of the better vodkas on the market if you run it through the still that many times. And if you add filtering to it as well, if you run this through a charcoal filter 3 or 4 times, yeah, you're gonna have a product that tastes like absolutely nothing. And yeah, at the end of the day, depending on how much work you want to put into it. In the future, for a vodka, I will definitely run and grab not a pot still, but something that I can at least reflux to strip some of those flavors away. Because for each of these runs, because we have put it into the still at roughly about 38 to 40%, definitely below 40%, our vapor liquid equilibrium stays the same. So every time when we distill it, we can only get up to about 85% on a good quality hard cut because of the vapor liquid equilibrium. Because we can't cool down the vapor going up the column, we can't bump that ABV up to get it to that flavor azeotrope. So yes, that little bit of flavor that got stuck in the back set every time we redistilled it did strip some flavor out, but not to the extent that a column still would, and you still get that good quality flavor. So in closing, does it make a good vodka? If you're willing to sacrifice the amount of alcohol you have to sacrifice to get to that flavor, absolutely you can do it with a pot still. So yeah, hope this helped, and if you want to see more of this kind of experiments, remember to hit that subscribe button downstairs, leave a comment, as well as give it a thumbs up so I know that the video is liked and we can do more of these kind of experiments. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and have a lacquer day.